Hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It is a Wednesday, April the 11th, 2018, coming up on 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Usually we are on a nightly basis, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and of course weekends it depends on how my day is going. Today, a little bit of a schedule adjustment here going on, so decided to push it back to 8 o'clock, probably maybe making it a bit more convenient for those of you who are traveling home from work and have already had your dinner, so now you can sit back and watch your weather live stream tonight. Seeing folks jumping on board. Fallen angel, what bad words am I saying? Not understanding. What did I say? Anyhow, got a lot going on in the broad scheme of things. We have a storm that's coming into the West Coast now that is going to be impacting our weather in the East later in the weekend and on Sunday night and Monday, and it's also going to be impacting our weather going toward the end of the week as warm air comes into the east. But there's going to be some big snows across the Northern Rockies and into the Plains and eventually into the upper Midwest. We have a large area of the country in the Southwest from West Texas and the Southern Rockies, southern half of the Rockies westward under a red flag warning because of the fire danger that exists. Very, very low relative humidities in the 3 to 6% range in some places, and very strong winds that'll be gusting to 50 to 55 miles an hour at times in some of those areas. So we've got issues. So why don't we get right to it here, and we'll bring up the watches and warnings and advisories and everything else and show you what's happening. It's all in the west at the moment. There isn't too much happening in the eastern part of the United States, other than the fact that some of the states are already indicating the impact from heavy rain that will be coming later in the weekend into the east. But right now, in the blue, winter storm watches for southern Minnesota back through almost all of South Dakota and northern Nebraska, and we've got watches also extending into northeastern Wyoming, southeastern Montana. Winter storm warnings have already gone up for parts of northwest Montana on southward, and even into parts of northern Idaho and northeastern Washington. You can see the large area of gold, dark gold, and I guess that's in the brown, indicating wind advisories. The high wind warnings are in the bright gold colors you see there, and in the darker gold, a high wind watch. And of course, in the red area, the red flag warnings up for the fire danger that exists. We also have winter weather advisories surrounding the winter storm warnings, a narrow band down through the mountains of Washington and down through Oregon, through northeastern California. Again, winter weather advisories there. So this is a pretty potent weather system that's coming in, impacting the weather in a number of different ways. We'll start off, I think, with the national radar and show you what's going on at the moment. There's a lead system, by the way, that is moving across the Great Lakes now with rains and snows, and that is, by the way, going to be the catalyst to bring the leading edge of warmer air into the eastern states beginning late on Thursday to some extent, but really for Friday and for Saturday. Those are the big days as far as the warming is concerned. And now into the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, we have heavy rains and snows in the mountains. That is moving eastward. This is the system that is going to eventually translate itself through the Rockies and the Plains with this major storm that's going to be moving across to the east. There's no severe weather threat at the moment, as the Storm Prediction Center map will show you. There's no organized severe thunderstorm activity going on, but we are going to see severe weather Here's today. You can see that just two small general areas of thunderstorms being indicated, one across the lower lakes and another back through the areas where we have the winter storm warnings up. In fact, a number of the local forecasts there have indicated the chance for thunder snow in those areas because of the intense low pressure that is going to be, relatively intense low pressure that is going to be developing in that area. I do want to show you going forward the Friday Storm Prediction Center map that it's not often that we see the Storm Prediction Center going days in advance with regards to showing enhanced risk, but indeed that is what they've done. They have advanced risk, enhanced risk being indicated. I'll bring it forward here. Hold on. This is day 2. So this is the risk for Thursday. Still no severe risk on Thursday, but just a general broad area of thunderstorms in Texas and in that whole area where we're seeing the possibility of, as I just mentioned, of thunder snow. Here is the day 3 outlook. So again, it's a little. Oh, I messed that up. Hang on a second. Here we go. Showing you the map in a bit of a different way here in terms of the probability. The risk of severe thunderstorms when it reaches 30% in the view of the Storm Prediction Center. This is where they have indicated enhanced risk in the area in red. This is for Friday into Saturday morning. So all northeast Texas, northwest Louisiana, the western half of Arkansas, southwestern Missouri, a small sliver of southeastern Kansas, and eastern Oklahoma, all in that enhanced risk. And of course, that's inside a much larger area of slight risk, 15%, that runs from southwestern Iowa all the way down to the Texas-Louisiana Gulf Coast, and the marginal risk in the 5% area that goes back further west into northeast Texas and even into parts of South Texas on northward into northern Iowa, and then east of the Mississippi River into western Illinois, westernmost Kentucky and Tennessee, the western third of Mississippi, and in Louisiana, just west of New Orleans, westward in that marginal risk of severe weather. So I think there's going to be a fairly extensive severe weather event on Friday in that part of the country. We don't have too much happening here in the Northeast. Weather conditions here just having weak upper air disturbances that are going through from time to time. And that really is about it. I'm trying to search for my the weather model page from Tropical Tidbits. It kind of faded on me there for a second. But let's show you what's happening with this developing storm. And we're getting this, by the way, with a very short break in the overall pattern that we've had for the last 5 to 6 weeks. That pattern has changed from the very beginning when we started out with the big block, and then the block disappeared, but still left us with a relatively stormy looking environment. And in the west, we're going to go to, I'm going to pull the upper air map first, and we can see what's happening. So, you basically have this west to east flow across the United States. There's a trough off the east coast. There's a trough off the west coast. Energy beginning to move in. Weather systems moving from west to east. So here's this rather impressive area of energy that digs down into the central and southern Rockies. You can see there's a wrapped up low or developing wrapped up low in northeastern Colorado, and it's from this that we're getting this major storm that's going to be forming out in the Northern Rockies and for the Northern Plains. Now, notice that the way the jet stream is here, it's split. You've got you can go from California, say from San Francisco, and just sort of ride that height line from San Francisco down into West Texas and then up into the middle Mississippi Valley, and then it exits out right off the New Jersey coast. So that's the flow basically from west to east. But then there's another stronger jet that is to the north, running from Lake Winnipeg, south of James Bay, into northern Maine and over toward Nova Scotia. So that is the jetway or the pipeline connection to colder air. But we do have a bit of a ridge that's popping up in the east, and that's in response to this deep trough that's in the Rockies. So as a result, the cold air is pushed back northward and kept basically along and north of the Canadian border. The problem is for the eastern states is that some of that low-level cold air is going to eventually try to move southward, and that's why the warm-up that's coming into the east is only going to be limited to a couple of days. But here comes the upper low. The ridge builds strongly along and just off the east coast for Saturday. Then the upper low swings around in the Great Lakes. You can see that trough lifting up and going into what we call a negative tilt. That is usually, that's a signature of a very energetic system. You have, a lot of energy here with this upper low wrapping up in the eastern lakes. Very typical for spring. This is at least something that we see more of in the spring than what we've seen so far this spring. And in the west, at the same time, we've got another energetic system coming into the west on Sunday night, Monday, that pushes eastward. And you can see the outcome here in the east of this deep upper low that's going to take a while to lift up. Once this storm system is done with us here in the east, we're going to get a bit of a break. And if you watch the jet stream pattern evolve as we go through the week, it is of next week, it gets a bit of a blocky signature again. We've been talking about that for the last few days. Notice, this is Thursday. The jet is coming straight north-south from Canada down into the western lakes, and then it turns and goes east-southeast from there across Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, on out into the Atlantic. So this is a cold, let's call it a cool look for the east, a chilly look for the east for pretty much all of next week, except for Monday, when this system, the Plains Rockies system finally pushes east far enough. Monday we'll be getting through the rest of the heavy rains from Sunday night into Monday afternoon. Then that gets out of the way. System wrapped up energy that's off the coast of California here that eventually comes inland into the southwest. And as we go ahead through time, again, the blocky signature, and notice up in northeastern Canada, you've got a big upper high pushing in again, so that's going to want to force energy to go out underneath us. I'm not sure of the specifics here with regards to the GFS on the late afternoon model cycle here. It does seem to suggest that there may be some kind of coastal low that could happen down the road, and I would admit that, definitely with a blocky signature, depending on the strength of that block that develops in here on this particular run of the GFS deep into the long range, that's a pretty strong blocking high. Prior runs, as usual with these blocks, as we saw during the winter and from back in last fall, model runs differ in terms of how they handle it. Sometimes they're stronger, sometimes they're weaker, sometimes further south, further north, or all of the above. Well, I think what we can generally say is that there will be higher than normal pressures from northeastern Canada to Greenland that will develop, and that is going to displace the jet stream further south in the long range. Whether that winds up causing problems down the road in terms of precipitation, and probably at this time of the year, we have to lean to the idea that it would be mostly rain in the east, except for maybe some of the colder areas. But you know what? That's long-term speculation that probably doesn't serve much purpose to get into at the moment. So let's come back to this particular storm. We'll start in the west, and you can see the area of snow, rather large, that develops, and it translates into the Northern Rockies. You've got this deep low in northeastern Colorado, but much of the moisture is up to the north. You've got these easterly winds and cold air from Canada that's just kind of pressing in just enough. and you start to get into these darker blue patches of heavy snow that the model develops, I think they definitely will be there. We also have action coming in from the west coast there with some energy. But here's our storm as it moves eastward into eastern Nebraska. Snow throughout the northern half of South Dakota, much of the southern half of North Dakota, back through Montana on Friday. And then as the low continues a very, very slow move to the east, it really takes its time. That upper low is going to be fighting that ridge in the east for a little while, so it's going to take a very, very slow track eastward. We've got a fairly well-developed low in southeastern Nebraska. You can see there's areas of heavy snow in northeast Nebraska, into eastern South Dakota, and especially into southwestern Minnesota. And I think we're going to probably see some 1 foot plus amounts out of this. When we put the snowfall map up in the west, and I'll switch to the eastern view so you can see what's going on the other side of this. But here are the snow totals through Sunday. Probably underdone in the areas in northern Montana. There will be a band of at least 6 to 12 through all of this, I believe. Although there's a lot of variation there that occurs in the Northern Rockies. And then you get into some heavier snows again as you go east across South Dakota. And here the model really kind of goes pretty wild with some snow amounts in that dark blue area that it showed in Minnesota. Now, whether it winds up actually being there or further south or maybe a little further north, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait to see how this all gets resolved. At this time tomorrow, maybe we'll have a better view of this. I'll bring the NAM model up. And the NAM has probably got a better representation in terms of where the heavy snow is going to be than the GFS does. They're not that different, but they're a little different across South Dakota, northern Nebraska, and a little less in terms of the numbers that they're producing in parts of Minnesota. But in generally 6 to 12 inches, and there are going to be some local 1 foot amounts out of this before it's all said and done. And here's how it looks when you look at the whole U.S. at the same time frame. I'm going to just back it up a little bit here. But you can see the snows that occur throughout much of Michigan, except the extreme south and into southeastern Canada, and north and west of I-90. You're going to get some snows out of this if the NAM is correct. The surface map on the NAM. You're going to have this frontal boundary to the north in upstate New York and up in through central New England. So north and west of there, you're probably going to wind up with snow and ice out of this. Here's the surface view. Hang on, sorry about that. So here's the surface view. And there's also going to be a band of ice, I think, that's going to be in play on the northern fringe of this. The NAM wants to have more ice than snow up in the Great Lakes. You can see some renegade piece that moves up into New England. There's the backdoor cold front that we've been talking about at this point is just about through New York City and dropping southward. You'll probably see, you will definitely see it a bit better on the GFS model. And by the way, that does remind me, I wanted to talk about the European for just a second here, but before we get to that, let me just show you the severe weather outbreak potential that is for Friday night and Saturday. And here it is on the GFS model, the low and the strong cold front going down into the western Gulf. The areas in yellow, very heavy rains. That's where you're going to see the potential for some severe thunderstorms on Friday. And then probably on Saturday as well, there could be another severe weather outbreak across Alabama, northwest Georgia, southeastern Mississippi. The Storm Prediction Center actually on its day 3 outlook is showing this to be at a slight risk of severe weather. It's kind of unusual to see, when we see risks being indicated in the long range by the Storm Prediction Center, usually what happens is when we get to the actual day, the severe weather risk winds up being more extensive. And the model does, the GFS and a few of the other models do show a fairly extensive area of severe weather on Saturday into Sunday morning as well. Then as we move into Sunday, It moves into the east, but I don't think this is going to be as widespread. Maybe you wind up with slight risk of severe weather in the Carolinas southward, but there is going to be heavy rain, a considerable amount of heavy rain here as low pressure develops right at what we call the point of occlusion. If you ever look at a weather map where you see a front that extends outward from a surface low, and then from there you have a warm front that goes to the east and a cold front that continues to the south. That point where all three fronts meet, the occluded front, the warm front, the cold front, is called the point of occlusion. And there will be a new developing surface low on that point of occlusion. And usually around that area, you can get some very heavy rains and thunderstorms. And I think that's what's going to happen here across the coastal mid-Atlantic and on up into the Hudson Valley and into southern New England on Monday. But by Monday afternoon, it looks like it's all said and done as that weather system finally kicks out to the east. And then as you can see from the rest of next week, there's a weak system that comes along on Thursday, moves out. But this is a very cool pattern that is setting up, again, because of the fact that you've got this blocky signature that is going to be developing in the North Atlantic and North America next week. Here's the wide view, and I'll start from the beginning. And if you watch up near Greenland, you're going to see that upper high that forms. And once that does start to form, as those pressures rise up in that region, the upper lows, the vortices here get displaced southward. The whole jet gets displaced southward. And when we move toward the middle part of next week, there's your blocking high. That's a fairly strong upper high that cuts off there between Greenland and northeastern Canada. You've got a vortex that's sitting south of James Bay, a cold flow out of Canada into the northeast. Now, whether there's energy with that, there is a trough that the model does swing around toward the end of the week, but I don't know how much there's going to be for it to work on. But as long as we do have this blocky signature, I think we have to open ourselves up to the possibility that we could see, maybe some kind of coastal low down the road. I don't want to, speculate too much. I don't, we're getting deeper into the month of April, so it's a totally different kind of synoptic pattern that we see now as opposed to when we had it back in the early part of March. You don't get the kind of strong storms. Usually, you don't get the kind of strong storms and deep coastal lows that you get when you're in January, February, and as we saw during the month of March. But again, if this blocky signature is real, and that's the big, that's going to be our big question here. We don't really know at this point if the model is doing one of its things with regards to overdeveloping a block or underdeveloping a block. That's something we're just going to have to follow from model run to model run. Now, I do want to just really fast touch on the European, because I saw a couple of comments here about this yesterday, not on the live chat, but on the video afterward. I just want to address something with respect to the European. I honestly don't know what the problem with the model is. There's something going on. For some reason, if I can see if I can get that normal anomaly. So I'm going to bring up the surface map here of the European, and I'm going to go back a couple of runs here, if it allows me to. Hang on. I think it was that one. That should be it. Yes. Okay. So this is from yesterday. And honestly, I didn't even give it, the European, much of a look yesterday until last night. And then this is one of the issues here with the European. Here's your surface low on the European in northeastern Missouri. And the front, you see these isobars, how they're pointed to the east across northern Illinois, northern Indiana, and then into northern Pennsylvania, rather, and extending out from there through southern New England. There's your backdoor cold front, okay? Southwest winds to the south side of it, northeast winds on the north. What the European did yesterday, which was really a shock when I looked at it even closer, is it really forced that backdoor cold front way, way south. the surface low into southeastern Indiana at this point. And at the low levels of the atmosphere, this model pushed down very cold air where it basically brought the 32-degree line down almost to New York City by Sunday morning and kept it there very close during the day Sunday and Sunday night, so that it actually showed what would have amounted to a significant ice storm across New York State, down into much of Connecticut and southern New England on northward. Well, it just didn't really seem to make sense to me. When I saw that, I thought, this just doesn't look right. And that's why, and in fact, today, last night and today, the European has corrected considerably. So has the Canadian, by the way, which was also showing a bit more of a colder look to it. But look where the surface low is on the Canadian versus where the European had it over Lake Huron versus the southern Indiana for Sunday. That seems to me make more sense. It's also much weaker here, and we get to the same place in terms of its what it's going to wind up doing here in the east, in that we're going to get some very hefty rainfalls out of this as that low forms on the point of occlusion and then deepens as it moves up into New England. In terms of rainfall, because I think there's going to be some flooding issues regarding this, we're going to see some 2 to 3 inch amounts, or maybe even more, over parts of Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey. I think we could probably draw a general area of 2 inches plus from western Pennsylvania into southern New England, including Long Island. And of course, you can see the higher amounts that are indicated in upstate New York and on up through southeastern Canada. Much of what's going to fall in here will be in the form of some snow. So I'm going to come back to you guys real quick because I'm running out of time. I only have about 5 minutes to chat with you guys. So let me bring myself back up full screen. And there we go. Okay. So I'm just going to run real quick through your questions. As I said, time is a little short tonight. Michael Bologna, the blocking of 9 to 13 is back, of 09 and 13 is black. Let it develop first. I'm not 100% sure what exactly we're going to be looking at in terms of the blocking. The backdoor cold front, Timothy Veltman, I think makes it down into southern New Jersey, into Delaware Bay, maybe a shade further south than that before it starts to lift up northward again. That's going to make it, at least in my neck of the woods, and certainly in yours, it's going to make it for a very raw Sunday indeed, especially coming off of Saturday for me, where temperatures are going to be in the 70s. I'm sorry. As far as temperatures, how low next week? I just saw the question. I'm sorry, I lost who it was. Hang on. I'm trying to find you so I can give you a little acknowledge. Jason Schaefer, New York City, Friday and Saturday. I certainly think 70s are doable. Friday may wind up being a little warmer than Saturday, depending on cloud cover. As far as how cold it is next week, I can't find who it is. I'm sorry, but certainly for this time of year, we should be up in my neck of the woods. We should at the very least be up in the low 60s. But don't be surprised if we have a number of days, a couple of days next week, where low 50s is going to be a struggle. Timothy Veltman, maybe along I-90 or just north of I-90. I think that's probably a good bet as to where the bottom side of that rain ice line is going to be, and the snow line a little bit further to the north. Michael Bologna, do we have to deal with 40s through early May? Well, as at the moment, going into the long range, we're going to have more days, certainly more days with temperatures below average than with temperatures above average. So if you want the above average stuff, folks, enjoy what we get at the end of this week, because it's really from New Jersey southward Thursday, starting tomorrow, from central New Jersey southward, for much of my area from eastern Pennsylvania southern to southern New England. Friday and Saturday are going to be the two above normal days, and Sunday no, because of the onshore flow. Monday probably because of the cold front coming in and the warm front pushing by to our north. The rains might help to keep the temperatures down a bit, but it'll probably wind up a little bit above normal, and then I think below normal pretty much all of next week. All right, folks, got to call it a night, but this late video tonight, we'll try to get back to a 6 o'clock start tomorrow as my schedule normalizes a little bit. In the meantime, you're closer to the Joe and Joe Show, which is at 9:15 on Facebook. So you can take a little bit of a break and come back on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, at 9:15 Eastern Time for the Joe Rayo Joe Cioffi Show. And in the meantime, if you haven't had your dinner, go have it. I've got a few things to do in the meantime. Have a great evening. Hopefully we'll see you later on Facebook. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow at the usual time, 6 o'clock Eastern.